to effect industrial policy, to nurture their own local industry. If that policy space is taken away by the agreement, how is this going to work? Will they suddenly fall into line, or will they pay lip service? How will those sort of industrial policy following nations fit with this new framework?
To my mind, industrial policy goes to become even more important than it has been before, for two reasons. Globally, even developed open market societies are starting to see the importance of industrial policy to create coherence between the different parts of the economy and the drive for value addition and competitiveness. And what I see is not so much like reducing those industrial policies that focus domestically, convergence of different sectors and priorities for value creation. I see it more tailored towards satisfying an emerging African market than purely for the international market and getting into global value chains, as has been the case of the earlier planning of industrial policy. I mean, our World Investment Report 2019 shows very major disruptions in the global value chains. Geopolitics is making some of the value chains get shorter, sourcing products closer home. We are seeing politically inspired rerouting of production networks, and we are seeing declining momentum in the growth of global value chains, which means now that new industrial policies are going to tailor production, for example, to intra-African trade as a target of new industrialization, or are going to put new emphasis in services trade in the wake of declining optimism about the value chains that were so strong that inspired economic zones over the past 20 years. So we see changes, but the centrality of industrial policy and policy space at national level remains vibrant, well beyond even the initial phase of free trade area. And we are seeing Germany still developing industrial policy when it's part of the common market.
Right.
We can't see the end of this for African countries.
I
think what can be challenging is countries which, like South Africa, have traditionally depended on high industrial tariffs, entering a common market or a free trade area with countries which, under the disciplines of WTO, already over-liberalized their industrial tariffs. So those are the kind of issues that will have to be negotiated out. In fact, one of the things that I am going to present to the presidents in Miami over the weekend is a proposal that there should be a standstill on tariffs, no introduction of new tariff measures vis-a-vis each other until they negotiate how to lower, instead of just letting the opening space that some can start building higher tariffs than they were before, which defeats the purpose of a common market. Yeah.
So each individual country will maintain the ability to put tariffs on if they choose?
I think part of the arrangement will be that there are some tariffs you can deal with third parties, but there has to be agreement about tariffs for the countries for market access within the African Union. But the ideal position is that countries that have joined the free trade area should have a common external tariff nomenclature. That there's a certain tariff band for industrial products, for semi-finished products, for raw products, and for consumer goods. So you have a common approach so that you stop the customs territory of your neighbor from being the route of dumping goods into your territory. So I've seen the East African community, COMESA in SADC. One of the critical steps in opening up to neighbors is negotiating a common external tariff.
Right. So that you can't, so you can't bring in cheap sugar into one country and sell it in the next.
And sell it in the next. That's right.
But while I see that, but what happens if Nigerian motorbike part manufacturers in Niue start, with the dropping of tariff barriers in South Africa, start selling into the South African market at incredibly cheap prices, will South Africa just have to accept it, or would they have the ability to raise tariffs?
No, they can't have the ability to raise tariffs. There are two routes of going about it. At one level, it depends on how sensitive to the local manufacturing sector motorbikes are in South Africa. If most of motorbikes are a major component of local industry and they are not as efficiently produced as in Nigeria, South Africa can put motorbikes on the list of sensitive products,
right,
which are subject to a quota that will be diminishing over time. That way, the shock of a flood of cheap imports from Nigeria does not arise. If they are, on the other side, not a sensitive product for South Africa, you can expect that South Africa will be competitive in another product which will allow it to surge its sales into Nigeria, commensurate with the surge of Nigerian motorbike parts into South Africa.
That would be obviously great if it all netted out perfectly, but
you know that in the initial phase, particularly vulnerable smaller economies may have some surge of cheap goods, and there are countervailing measures that are available to them in an agreement.
And you say those countervailing measures have some kind of a sunset clause built in?
Yeah, usually you have a sunset clause in all measures, differential measures that reduce the obligation you take on day one. You have to stagger whether it is 5 years or 10 years, renegotiable after as the deadline is approaching. If you have not satisfied, what are the mitigations, what are the reasons, and how much longer do you need an extension? I think these are standard practice. We've done it in the ESC COMESA, and I think it's going to happen also in the CFTA.
Just finally, obviously UNCTAD has a global vision. You've looked at these issues around the world. What can Africa learn from successful implementation of other free trade zones from around the world?
I think one of the main lessons, and I've been trying to push this a lot, is that the politicians and government technocrats who are negotiating the architecture of the CFTA are not the sounding board of how things work. It is the business community, the entrepreneurs in the countries. And if you look at other areas, a fully engaged and informed civil society and business community are major conditions for successful integration. If you take the example of the Greater Mekong River Valley in Southeast Asia, it's an excellent example in what bottom-up integration is like. Momentum for the agreement and priorities for industrial sectors was based on the felt needs of the border communities and existing producers. So they say these are the sectors where we'll be very happy to be helped to strengthen our regional market access. These are sectors where we'll be very happy to get intermediate goods from our neighbors. And so the negotiators at the technical level are responding to actually articulated interests of the entrepreneurs. In the African Union case here, is the political drive has gone faster than the felt sense of priorities of the business community. And that after some point, particularly hopefully starting this weekend, there will be much closer engagement of the entrepreneurs across borders. What is it that can be done better to optimize regional cross-border investment, cross-border cooperation in production and services trade? What is it that will be necessary? For example, I was giving this example this morning to a meeting that the two largest chocolate manufacturers in Africa are Egypt and South Africa. The cocoa that is used in the chocolate comes from Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana.
Yeah.
But the cocoa paste that they use for those chocolates is imported. 80% to 90% is imported from Switzerland.
Wow.
So the business community should ask the question, what is it that has been stopping cocoa from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire going to Ghana, to South Africa and Egypt, unless it is going via Switzerland? And can we address the ways that will now make directly value linkages between the cocoa and chocolate sectors of West Africa and North and South Africa? Just as an example of those questions in a practical way that can be addressed by the business community.
Are there any other interesting examples or potential link-ups that you see across the continent?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at it, for example, Uganda has some of the largest underutilized ginning and yarning capacity on the continent. Mm-hmm. Countries of the Sahel have a lot of idle underexported cotton, and Kenya is the largest textile exporter under AGOA to the US. Mm-hmm. Creating a mechanism that cotton from Tanzania, Zambia, and Western Africa goes into the ginning capacity of Uganda and feeds the apparel requirements of Kenya to manufacture for the American market will be a complete regional value chain from Africa. Mm. And instead of West Africa railing all the time about greater market access in America with its cotton, it can have market access in Uganda.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to end on a positive note.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
That is all for this week. Thanks to Mukhisa Kituyi. Thanks to you for listening. And if you've enjoyed it, please do rate us wherever you get your podcasts and join us on Twitter and Facebook for more.